All right, that's all I have for Indiana. I want to talk about the NFL, and I want to talk about the NFL playoffs because the Commanders actually did it. The Commanders actually did what I speculated on whether or not they were going to be able to do. Last week, I sort of half previewed this game, the Lions-Commanders divisional round game. I just asked the question and spoke on whether or not, or really what would happen if the Commanders won. What would that mean for Washington? What would that mean for Detroit? And how would Washington have to, what would Washington have to do to actually go out and win that game? To me, the first thing I say is don't look now, right? Everyone hold your horses. Don't look now. But the Washington Commanders are a game away from the Super Bowl, which is an insane comment, an insane sentence. And I personally can't think of a time where I ever even thought about that idea, right? There's teams in the NFL that sometimes I speculate on. I'm like, oh, wonder what it'd be like if the Seahawks got back to the Super Bowl. I think about that often because I miss the Legion of Boom. Think about the Seahawks. What would it be like if they were in the Super Bowl? And you can imagine it. You can see a world with the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. I'm young, I know, but in my lifetime, I have not seen the Commanders or any iteration of their former names in the Super Bowl or even close to it. I've seen them in the playoffs when I was a child, right? But I never really saw the Commanders or this team in Washington achieve a level of success like this. Somehow they're a game away from the Super Bowl, and it doesn't even really feel real, and it especially won't feel real if they actually get to the Super Bowl and have an opportunity to win it. Washington beat Detroit 45-31 in the divisional round of the NFL playoffs on the road at the number 1 seed in the Detroit Lions. They had 5 turnovers. Jared Goff threw 3 interceptions. He fumbled as well. Jameson Williams, they had a trick play. Jameson Williams threw the other interception. So Detroit had 5 turnovers, and I want you to keep that in mind the whole game. Because Detroit scored 31 points despite the fact that they turned over the ball 5 times. Very high-scoring game. It was electric. And what stuck out the most, partially because the team won, but what stuck out the most was that Jaden Daniels is truly the generational talent of this draft class, right? We thought it was going to be Caleb Williams. Maybe it will be, but Jaden Daniels is the true standout generational talent that we hoped we would see from this past draft. He was 22 for 31 in this game for 299 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 0 turnovers, which is the most important statistic because, again, Daniels had 0 turnovers and Goff had 4. Daniels played like a veteran, all right? That's what sticks out to me right away. Jaden Daniels played like a veteran in this game against a veteran quarterback in Jared Goff for the Detroit Lions. He was lethal. He was effective. He was an unrelenting force, stealthily attacking the Lions secondary at every single turn. It felt like every play, every drive, Jaden Daniels was going to have an answer for the team. He was going to have an answer for the offense. When Detroit faced them with a problem or faced them with an obstacle, Jaden Daniels circumvented them all. Lethal, effective, unrelenting, 22 for 31 for 299 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The Lions had turnover issues in a way that the Commanders just didn't. They also have been very injured, right? Jared Goff threw 3 interceptions. He lost a fumble as well. At the end of the day, that was the end of the game. That's all you really needed to see was 5 turnovers to none, really, at the end of the day. 4 turnovers to none in terms of the quarterbacks. Goff made mistakes that you really don't anticipate seeing from a veteran, not just a veteran quarterback, but a veteran quarterback that had been to a Super Bowl. Remember, the Rams went to the Super Bowl. They lost 13-3 to the Patriots. Jared Goff was the quarterback at that time in some of his earlier years, right? So turnover problems in this game really sold it. I think if Jared Goff is a little bit more composed, I think if he throws the ball a little bit more conservatively, and I know this isn't the identity of the Lions. I know this isn't how Dan Campbell operates. But if the Lions were a little bit more conservative with the football on offense, maybe they come out with a win in this game. They don't give Washington as many opportunities to score. They score more times themselves. But Detroit was also poisoned by injuries all year, and that's why almost any shortcoming in this game doesn't quite hold the same weight to me in my head because I keep in mind the fact that, again, the Lions were poisoned by injuries this season. Yes, it was a meltdown for the ages in this game. They should not have lost, don't get me wrong. But the secondary was extra vulnerable due to injury, and that was something that was fully taken advantage of perfectly by Jaden Daniels. But again, the secondary was injured, very injured. It was decimated truly by injury, and that made it much easier on Jaden Daniels. Detroit, to me, was never going to circumvent this amount of injury. I made a whole video about it a couple weeks ago. I basically just said before the playoffs, I said but before they played the Vikings. So after week 17, I said, it's not Detroit's year. After that game against the 49ers in primetime, I said, it's not Detroit's year. They're so injured, I don't think they'll be capable of winning the Super Bowl. I didn't necessarily think that they were going to lose this game against the Commanders. But I certainly didn't think that they were going to be able to get past this one and then win 2 more games against 2 of the best teams in the league. Maybe they would get to the Super Bowl, but they were not going to be able to win it. The injuries this season piled up, and we knew that way before this point in the season, and I guess it just finally set in that the Lions were not going to be able to win the Super Bowl or even get close, knowing just how, again, poisoned they were by injuries. And then you have a turnover issue in this game. You end the game with 5 turnovers. Sure, you score 31 points anyway, but 5 turnovers with a team that's injured is never going to be able to make up for the success that this Commanders team put up. It was a great game from the Commanders. It was a really bad game from the Lions. That's a recipe for disaster for Detroit, especially knowing that, again, their roster hasn't been at full strength all year, practically. The Commanders managed to win this game, and to me, DC can rest happy, right? The season is complete. If you're a Washington Commanders fan, you must be feeling euphoric, but you must be feeling totally fine, right? It doesn't matter what happens. If you lose to the Eagles, that's fine. You made it to the NFC Championship game. You haven't done this. I don't know how long it's been, honestly, but Washington, at least in my lifetime, has not reached this level of success. They have a new young quarterback. It's an inexpensive roster. They upset the 1 seed. They hang 45 on them. These are new, fantastic heights that never, ever would have been even thought of being seen before if you were a Commanders fan. They dropped 45 on the 1 seed. That alone would knock out a Commanders fan in the preseason if you told them that information. You guys must have no idea what to feel. I would have no idea what to feel if the Colts just pulled this off out of nowhere next season. And the craziest part is, it's not even over yet. Right? The Commanders still have a Super Bowl to play for. They still have an NFC Championship to play for. They're still in contention to win it all, right? This game next week against the Eagles may require a full preview. They return to Philadelphia for round 3. Washington won most recently. Both teams won at home. Again, this next game will obviously be back in Philadelphia for the NFC Championship game. The Commanders are a game away from the Super Bowl. They absolutely could just go out and make the Super Bowl, maybe go out and win it, right? The sky's the limit for Washington at this point. They're 2 wins away from a championship. They're 1 game away from playing for it. They split against Philadelphia. It's a divisional opponent. Both teams know each other very well. Maybe not as much because Jaden Daniels is new and the Eagles have had to adapt to him. Again, the Commanders won just a couple weeks ago, about a month or 2 ago, a month and a half, against the Eagles in Washington. But both teams have won at home. The Eagles are at home for the NFC Championship game. That game might require a full preview. We might have to just preview both games on Thursday when we get to that point for the NFC and AFC Championship. But either way, no matter how, again, the Commanders could lose by 45 next week, but they beat the Lions. They knocked out the Lions. They've made it this far to the NFC Championship game as a 6 seed, as a true wild card team. And the Commanders, to me, have opened up their Super Bowl window. You have a young quarterback in Jaden Daniels, and because he's on his rookie contract for the next few years, next 3, maybe 4, but more than likely they're gonna try to rework a different deal, right? Young quarterback in Jaden Daniels. That means that he's not being paid very much because he's on his rookie contract. So you have a supporting cast that you can spend money on, right? The rest of this roster talent you can really lift up, and you don't need to do much more lifting up because, again, the Commanders made it to the NFC Championship game this season. So if they make moves in the offseason, they have the capital, they have the resources for the next few years to lift up Jaden Daniels and support him as best as possible so that the Commanders could potentially reload and try to make a run at the Super Bowl or the NFC Championship again. You have, again, a young quarterback, a supporting cast that you have the resources to spend on, and all the momentum the world possibly could offer a football team. And that right there is a perfect recipe to find success in the future. The Commanders, to me, are one of those teams that has an open Super Bowl window because, again, that recipe, young quarterback, a supporting cast they can spend money on, and all the momentum in the world is exactly what you want to see for a young team like this. We saw the Bills achieve a similar level of success. They haven't gotten over the hump yet. Maybe they will this year, right? There's been teams. The Texans maybe are a good example. They were injured throughout the year like the Lions were. They couldn't get over the hump this past round of the postseason. But either way, Washington's Super Bowl window is open. They've had an incredible season. It's complete. They can rest happy. But maybe, just maybe, the Washington Commanders decide to go ahead and win a Super Bowl this season, and that very well could happen. They're only 2 wins away from achieving that. It starts this weekend against the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. We will preview that game on Thursday, and I cannot wait to watch it all play out.